Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, and you are watching BatFacts right here on YouTube. As the guy that hosts Fat Man Beyond, I go to BatFacts to get my what? BatFacts. It's that simple. He puts it right there in the title. Matt Fielding's a damn genius, man. If you're not watching BatFacts, get off the internet.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Smith. Thank you, sir. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome to BatFacts. And if you're returning, welcome back. From the troubled alleyways to the palatial skyscrapers, the tunnels and pathways underground to the airways above it all, Gotham City continues to be what Batman fights for. And even after citywide attacks from innumerable foes and disasters both natural and otherwise, the city continues to persevere, in no small part to the Dark Knight. But how well does Batman know Gotham really? What if something came along to challenge the Caped Crusaders' very idea of what home is? And what if it didn't come along at all, but rather had always been there? This episode of BatFacts, I'm talking about the Court of Owls. These days, writer Scott Snyder is best known for being the architect of massive DC crossover events via dystopian future stories such as Dark Knight's Metal, Last Night on Earth, and Death Metal. These tales pick up on threads by previous DC luminaries like Jeff Johns and Grant Morrison, and feature grandiose multiverses and villains that stretch the fabric of reality itself. But when Snyder was first approached about writing the main Batman title, he was in the middle of his comparatively grounded first story arc in the pages of Detective, The Black Mirror. Paired with artist Jock, the story stars Dick Grayson as Batman, whom Snyder enjoyed writing, as Grayson's worries and uncertainty in taking on the role of Batman mirrored his own in writing such a legendary character in his debut at DC Comics. Even before The Black Mirror was finished being published, DC was putting plans in motion for 2011's line-wide relaunch, The New 52, and approached Snyder about moving over to the main Batman title. He suddenly found himself gripped by, quote, abject terror at the prospect of not only writing a returned Bruce Wayne, but upon learning he would be writing the first Batman #1 in 70 years. But Snyder persevered beyond his fears, and along with superstar artist Greg Capullo, then best known for his legendary run on Spawn, crafted a unique tale for the Dark Knight that would become a modern classic. Drawing upon his history as a horror and suspense novelist, Snyder told most recent friend of the show Kevin Smith on his Fat Man on Batman podcast that he wanted to write a story where Gotham City becomes more and more alien to Batman, and wanted to explore the idea of your own home suddenly becoming terrifying to you. His window into this terror was the legend of the Court of Owls. The Court of Owls are a secret society comprised of Gotham's wealthy power elite that has been operating and controlling much of Gotham City from the shadows since colonial times. Thought by most, including Batman, to be merely an urban myth, their very existence is a closely guarded secret, but their legacy lives on in a children's poem handed down by generations of Gothamites. Beware the Court of Owls that watches all the time, ruling Gotham from a shadowed perch, behind granite and lime. They watch you at your hearth, they watch you in your bed. Speak not a whispered word of them, or they'll send the Talon for your head. The Talon, as mentioned in the poem, are the court's loyal army of assassins, doing their bidding up to and including murder of anyone who the court may put to death. These assassins are kept in a state of suspended animation deep within the court's inner sanctum until called upon, and are subject to a special serum that makes them nearly unkillable. This is a different kind of antagonist for the Dark Knight. Not someone he can simply punch in the face and throw in Arkham Asylum. This secret society can be, and in many cases are, anywhere and everywhere, and had the world's greatest detective convinced for years that they didn't even exist. Now nearly anyone could be hiding an owl mask, secretly being aligned with the court, and the more Batman looks, the closer to home he finds them. So why owls? To get the simplest answer, one only has to look to nature. What is the natural predator to bats? Clowns? Penguins? If you answered owls, you answered correct. This, of course, is not the first time Batman has come up against a villain with an owl motif. Most notably, there have been several iterations of one of the Dark Knight's evil analogs, Owlman, the first being in a Justice League adventure from 1964 created by Gardner Fox and Mike Sekowsky. Gotham's wealthy and powerful utilizing owl imagery for their organized crime society could also be a reference to ancient Greece, and the ancient Greek goddess Athena, who coveted a pet owl, which would adorn coins, vases, and other symbols of affluence for that era. The court's introduction kicks off when billionaire Bruce Wayne launches an initiative to rebuild and restore Gotham City. Mirroring the behavior of actual owls, who don't make their own nests as much as take over dwellings made by other animals, the court operates several nests hidden in various Wayne properties across Gotham City, typically in the superstitious space between the 12th and 14th floors. When Bruce's plans to invigorate the city threatens to potentially expose the court, they sentence Wayne to death and begin to leave not-so-subtle warnings and clues that Batman begins to find. We learn that Bruce's reluctance to believe in the Court of Owls comes from one of his first cases after his parents' death. As a young boy, unable to accept the apparent randomness of his parents' murder, for a time he suspected the Court of Owls must have somehow been involved with the grisly double homicide. But the further the investigation took the inexperienced detective, the more dead ends turned up, and he finally concluded that the Court of Owls was simply an urban myth. With a renewed vigor after narrowly surviving an attack on Bruce Wayne by a Talon at Wayne Tower, Batman delves deeper and deeper into uncovering the court's presence in Gotham. He discovers several owls' nests hidden within Wayne-funded buildings, learns of their troubling history with the Wayne family, and their disturbing tradition of recruiting young acrobats, including a plot to enlist young Dick Grayson into the group, before being unknowingly saved from such a fate by Bruce Wayne. Most villains work hard to get into Batman's head. All the Court of Owls had to do was show that they were already there. Easily the highlight of the court's introduction comes from the 5th issue. As Batman continues to investigate the court, he is ambushed by a Talon and thrown into a sprawling underground labyrinth. The endless maze is designed to separate its victims from their very sanity. No matter which direction he goes, Batman perpetually winds up in the same room. Its walls lined with red-framed pictures. Each line of pictures documents a previous victim of the maze's descent into madness. In the center of the room sits a camera on a tripod, which documents his every return, and eventually, framed pictures of Batman begin to line the walls as well. With no food and only extremely questionable water for sustenance, Batman toils underground for days on end with no escape in sight, while up above the Bat family leaves the bat signal shining over Gotham in vain. Be it sleep deprivation or something in the water, it's around this time that Batman begins to hallucinate, seeing himself as more a monster than a man, and as Batman's perception begins to be altered, so too does the reader's. Gradually, in a reading experience that's completely unique to comics, the book's panel orientation changes, forcing the reader to physically turn the book in order to continue reading. By the time Batman's world has been turned completely upside down, so too has the book itself in the hands of the reader. And just as he reaches his snapping point, a Talon comes out from behind him and stabs him in the back. The Court of Owls were no longer an urban myth. This unorthodox storytelling tactic was devised by artist Greg Capullo and had to be fought for, as DC were apprehensive that readers would think it was merely a printing error. The gamble paid off, as issue 5 is a favorite of both Snyders and fans alike, and is often cited as a brilliantly inventive use of the medium. With the Court of Owls now cheering and calling for blood from the rafters, the Talon begins to trounce a weakened Batman. Somehow, Batman summons the last of his will to fight back, and uses the potassium chlorate found within the camera's filament plates to cause an explosion. Saved by potassium chlorate! He warns the court that he'll be back for them before making a daring escape from the underground ladder. Furious that Batman had escaped and could potentially expose their lair, court leadership goes on the offensive, awakening every single Talon at their disposal to descend upon Gotham City. This kicks off the second arc of the court's introduction, and the New 52's first major crossover, Night of Owls. Spanning every Batman book as the entire extended Bat family defends Gotham from the Talon, and Bruce fights a horde of Talon at Wayne Manor in a giant suit of bat armor. The crossover even extended into an issue of All-Star Western Comics, featuring Jonah Hex fighting an Old West version of the Talon, and expanding the timeline of the Court of Owls. The Bat family eventually defeats the army of Talons, but the very nature of the court makes an all-encompassing defeat nearly impossible, and Batman once again reaffirms his vow to keep Gotham City safe from crime. The Court of Owls were easily the most popular new Batman villain to be introduced in the New 52 era. Sorry, Mr. Bloom. And the success of their introduction cemented the creative team of Snyder and Capullo, leading to DC renewing their contract for another 40 issues. making it a 52-issue run over nearly 5 years. The storyline itself has been collected in several editions, including a DC Essentials version, an oversized Absolute version, a version that comes packaged with its own Court of Owls mask, and even a handsome unwrapped edition featuring Greg Capullo's raw pencils. 2019 also saw a prose novelization adapted by Greg Cox. The series also spawned a spin-off series of sorts, Talon, which ran for 18 issues from 2012 to 2014, and followed Calvin Rose, a former Talon assassin turned anti-hero. The Court would pop back up from time to time, like this issue where Batman questions them as a part of a Joker investigation, and they would make their full return during the Robin War storyline, where the organization expands, going international and calling themselves the Parliament of Owls, which is actually the proper term for a group of owls and was coined by author C.S. Lewis. Bonus owl fact. The Court would make a brief appearance in Jeff Johns' Doomsday Clock, where they appear to introduce the group's leader, the Judge of Owls, making it clear that we have not seen the last of the group. Outside of comics, the Court of Owls were the antagonists for the third season of Batman prequel series Gotham, as well as the animated feature Batman vs. Robin, which combines an adaptation of the Court of Owls storyline with material from Grant Morrison's run on Batman and Robin, and is a sequel of sorts to previous DC animated film Son of Batman. After much speculation and various viral teases over its lengthy development time, the announcement trailer for 2021's apparently Batman-free Batman game Gotham Knights from WB Montreal would heavily showcase the video game debut of the Court of Owls as well as the Talon, featuring a modified version of their infamous poem.
The Talon strikes you dead.
And many have speculated that the Underground Labyrinth may be a playable level in the game. And speaking of speculation, despite the involvement of several villains, such as Riddler, Penguin, Catwoman, Carmine Falcone, and at least a cameo from the Joker, 2022's The Batman film has persistently been rumored to include the Court of Owls. The prominent inclusion of this owl in the DC fandom teaser trailer only ramped up speculation of the Court's involvement, or at the very least, Matt Reeves planting seeds for an appearance down the road of his planned trilogy. But only time will tell if they make the jump to the big screen. So that's the Court of Owls. Thanks for watching. As some of you may know, I actually had to make this video twice, as a nearly finished version was lost when my trusty 2010 MacBook that I made all previous episodes of BatFacts with finally kicked the bucket and took the entire episode with it. A moment of silence for the first Bat Factory. So needless to say, I appreciate your patience. If you liked the video, please tell a friend who likes Batman, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. I'm on Instagram as BatFacts Videos, and I post these videos on the Batman subreddit on the day of their release. My huge and heartfelt thanks to Mr. Kevin Smith for the kind words and the introduction. And stay tuned for the next episode, where I'll be continuing the Robin series talking about the third Robin, Tim Drake. Some bat time, same bat channel.